It's only 8:18 here, which means it's 5:18 in Oakland. I hope your Christmas is shaping up to be the Christmas of your dreams, or at least just a relaxing day or start of a week of vacations for you through New Year's. Anyway, shock. The Detroit Lions were eliminated by the Minnesota Vikings with a backup quarterback, not J.J. McCarthy. A backup quarterback, not J.J. McCarthy, 23-10. And it looked like the Vikings might be able to come back. It was close for most of the game, but thanks to Brian Flores' defense, the Vikings defensive line made life really rough for former Cal quarterback, now Lions starting quarterback Jared Goff. Jared Goff was sacked 5 times. Now, some of you looking at the thumbnail may say, hey, look, don't I know who that is in that photograph? And the answer is yes, it is none other than Annie Agar, who I met. First, I met Annie here in 2017, and I'll say this real quick because you say what's the relevance, when she was interviewing Steve Smith here at the Philadelphia NFL Draft. Then I saw her again in Las Vegas on the red carpet in 2022, and she's been a fixture on the internet talking about the NFL and doing her NFL boardroom segments. But this time, the Packers fan made a crack about the Detroit Lions, such that I felt her photograph, including in fine print, what she said should be on that picture. And what did she say? She basically said that the Lions are still in search of an NFL playoff spot. Ha ha ha. Noting that, and she wrote this before the Lions lost to the Minnesota Vikings. She wrote that, okay? So now, well, she's right. The Minnesota Vikings handed a loss, and this was a defensive masterpiece from Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator. Once the Miami Dolphins head coach, a man I happened to meet thanks to the late Chris Mortensen, who introduced us at the 2017 NFL Spring League meeting in Florida. At any rate, great guy. At any rate, this is the damage that was done. Jared Goff, 18 of 29 for 197 yards, average gain of 6.8 yards. That's it. 1 touchdown, yet 2 interceptions. But he was sacked 5 times for 34 yards and losses, for a passer rating of 64.9. Now, or you'd say, well, it's okay because they've got Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Well, okay. Jahmyr Gibbs, 3 rushes. That's it. Excuse me. I mean, not 3 rushes. 17 rushes for a measly 41 yards. And the reason why I'm stumbling over my words is I'm rushing to get to this statistic, a measly 2.4 yards per carry per rush. That's right. 2.4 yards per rush. 2.4. His longest gain was 8 yards. In other words, he wasn't even able to produce a first down on his first carry, unless, of course, he happened to be, say, on third down and he was carrying it for 2 yards. But from the way the Vikings played, seeing those opportunities on third and short were not often at all. You would say, well, David Montgomery, didn't he perform, better? Well, the answer is this. How about 10 carries for a measly 25 yards, which is 2.5 yards a rush, right? His longest game, 8 yards. And then Jared Goff himself contributed 2 yards. And that's it. So the Vikings were basically stuffed, all right? There's no other way to put it. The Vikings offense was stuffed. And they paved the way with their turnovers for a Minnesota offense to do just enough to win. Matt Brosmer, you would say, who? Well, he's number 12. Matt Brosmer was 9 of 16 passes, which he wasn't even like, hey, 9 of 12 or something, better percentage. 9 of 16, which means just barely over 50%. 9 of 16 for just 51 yards, an average gain of 3.2 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. He was sacked 7 times. 7 times for 48 yards and losses. 7 times, all right? His passer rating is worse than Jared Goff's, all right? But so you would say, okay, with all that, how is it that the Vikings managed to win over the Lions 23-10? And the answer is, unfortunately, turnovers. Note, Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions. Matt Brosner threw none. Threw no interceptions at all. And the fact of the matter is that Jordan Addison had 1 carry for 65 yards and a touchdown. Big difference. So when you have 2 teams whose defenses are basically pummeling the opponent's offense, there's always going to be that one play that makes the difference. And that Jordan Addison 65-yard run was the difference right there. Now, prior to that, we had Aaron Jones carrying the ball 18 times for just 53 yards, or 2.9-yard average. But then Child Chandler contributed 7 for 24, and Max Brosner himself 2 for 16. But in terms of yards, 158 yards rushing because of that breakaway, versus just get this, just 68 yards. 68 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Jared Goff himself. The longest gains they were able to muster, 8 yards. No 12-yarders, no 30-yarders, and certainly no 65-yarder at all. Nothing like that. And so in the receiving, we had the Detroit players contributing 97 yards of receiving, but guess this, Minnesota receiving was just 51 yards. It was just 51 yards. But then we turn to something else, fumbles. All right, Detroit fumbled the ball. All right, and this is why I think one of my favorite quarterbacks and good guys, Jared Goff, may not be in the Pro Bowl this year. Jared Goff fumbled the ball not once, not twice, but he fumbled it 3 times. Jared Goff fumbled the ball 3 times. Yep. Read it and weep, folks. Right here. Jared fumbles, okay? 0 fumbles. Detroit fumbles. Jared Goff 16, 3. Jahmyr Gibbs added 1 for 4 fumbles. You can't win like that. Okay? He lost all 3 of them. That's the difference. Jahmyr even lost his. By contrast, fumbles, Max himself had 1, which he didn't lose. And there's your game, folks. All right, there's your game. There's your game. Okay? So the sub-headline has to be Jared Goff fumbles 3 times. And that's what happened. Jared Goff fumbled the ball 3 times. And had Jared Goff not fumbled the ball 3 times, you have to look at the statistics and say, yeah, Brian Flores did a great job, but the Lions defensive coordinator did a better job, a much better one. Unfortunately, the Lions defensive coordinator and the Lions offensive coordinator were both let down by Jared Goff, fumbling the ball 3 times and throwing a pick, 2 picks. So Jared Goff basically was responsible for 5 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and 3 fumbles. 2 interceptions and 3 fumbles. Jared Goff was responsible for 5 turnovers, 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles. 5 turnovers. So there you go. That's the game. That's the game right there. That's the game right there. No question about it. It shows up on the stat line. And it shows up right there. Now, yes, I did watch the game in bits and pieces, but listened to it more than watched it, on radio. But I believed that with all the back and forth and the turnovers, the Lions are going to pull out the big play. And there was reason to expect that because for the turnovers that were being committed, the Lions were essentially stopping the Minnesota offense. That's it. Now, from a situational perspective, the Lions got the first downs in the fourth quarter, that they needed to get to seal the game. And that was the difference. They didn't stop, they being the Detroit Lions defense didn't stop the Minnesota Vikings offense to get the ball back to have a chance of closing the gap. They were up after Addison's run, they were up 20-10, were the Vikings, and yet a touchdown and a field goal could win it. Detroit didn't seem to have that play that they could run that gave them the breakaway result, a quick touchdown. Didn't happen. The Vikings put the clamps on them on defense, although not as good as the Detroit Lions put the clamps on them. And you just have to say that, okay? That has to be noted. This game could have turned around the other way. It really could have. I mean, if you look at the team stats, it really could have. Jared Goff was far and away the better passing leader, 197 yards versus Gomer's mere 51. Now, Addison in one play had more rushing yards than Jahmyr Gibbs, 41. That was a difference, okay? But again, that also underscores how close the game was, all right? First downs, Detroit had 16 versus 11 for the Lions, 12 by passing, 4 by rushing. The Lions had 2 first downs by passing and 6 by rushing. Yardage, 231 total yards for the Lions versus 161 yards for the Vikings. And yet, the Vikings still won. It was because their defense played almost as good as the Vikings defense. We have to note that the Minnesota Vikings turned in a 7-sack performance. The Minnesota Vikings turned in a 7-sack performance. All right. That's what I'm sorry. The Minnesota Vikings turned in a 7-sack. The Minnesota Vikings offense was sacked 7 times, is what I'm trying to say. The Minnesota Vikings defense turned in a 7-sack performance. And again, the Minnesota Vikings defense turned a 5-sack performance, not 7. But the Detroit Lions allowed themselves to be sacked 7 times. So, all right, the Vikings were sacked 7 times. They lost the ball 5 times. Wow. That's the difference. That is the difference. The Lions offense was that difference. And what I'm looking for real quick is, I am wondering, let's see, Vikings, because we don't talk about him. The Lions, because we don't talk about the Lions defensive coordinator as much as we should, because he turned in a heck of a performance. And that's Kelvin Shepard right here. They talk about Brian Flores, but they need to talk about Kelvin Shepard, because the Lions offense coordinator owes this man an apology. Jared Goff owes this man an apology. Kelvin Shepard was promoted to the role in January of this year. It took over from Aaron Grant. He's done an outstanding job. That man's one of his finest performances of his young career was overshadowed by Jared Goff turning the ball over 5 times, single-handedly. 2 interceptions and 3 fumbles. Stay tuned for my next video. Subscribe to Zinni62 on YouTube and bookmark NFL News by Zinni62.com. And Annie, You were right. I'm not sure that you were right for the reasons you have forecasted. Are you going to tell me that you believe that Jared Goff is going to turn the ball over 5 times? Wow. See ya.